breaking point. That's exactly where young Australians are at the moment. I want to go through what the problem is, and then I'm going to talk to you about what the solution could look like. Now, home affordability is at breaking point. Young Australians are being stiffed into the housing market with record deposits, high mortgage repayments, creating the sharpest generational divide in modern history, a new report confirms. We've all thought about, whether we should have purchased property 10, 15 years ago. Well, a lot of us were too young to even purchase at that point. And then there's also this argument that properties were so much cheaper 30 to 40 years ago. The previous generation don't know what they're talking about. It's so much harder today. Well, let's break down a couple of these things, but let's just address how big of an issue this actually is. A median income household now needs more than 8 years to save a 20% home deposit, up from 6 years in the early 2000s. So here, this graph here is just saying the time required to save a deposit has increased by the years. And we can see that it was closer to about 6, and now we're all the way up closer to about 8 or 9 years. Now, this is quite deceiving because yes, sure, it's going to take you more years to save a 20% deposit, but if you are still in 2025 or 2026 thinking that you need a 20% deposit to buy property, you would be mistaken. And this is the argument that we have here with generations as well. Sure, property prices were much cheaper and incomes relative to the price of housing was a better ratio back then compared to now. But we also have more lenders now. We also have more options now. We also have the government giving out a lot more, and there's also a shared equity scheme that's going to come out next year as well. And there's different forms of housing grants as well as the government scheme that's kicking off soon. And that means that you can actually go ahead and buy property with like 2% to 5% deposits. Now, in most cases, that's probably not a good idea, but let's just talk a little bit more about this. All right, so now we have a position where it's taking 54% of someone's household income, or median household income, towards loan repayments. So if you think about that, when you used to do tests for whether you can afford a rental property or a property in general, the rule was 30%. So if you spent more than 30% of your income towards housing, it meant that it was unaffordable. And it means that you couldn't actually afford that place. So now home loans are taking up 54% of someone's income. Now, in saying all of that, I still think it is a great time to get into property. But the argument is we're looking at Sydney and we're looking at these expensive capital cities. And for a lot of people, the reality is it's just not easy to get into. Now, this is not unique to just Sydney. It's not unique to just Melbourne or Brisbane. There are places all over the world that are experiencing the exact same thing. And I know it's not a great thing to be talking about, but the reality is that unless we have more supply coming to the market, it is always going to get harder. The other part that we've also addressed many times on this channel, and I urge you to scroll through and check out those videos, is that we have immigration at record highs. So unless we can slow that down, increase supply of properties, we're not going to have this situation change. And yes, sure, we get all these interest rate cuts and things like that, but that just means house prices increase. And if your wage isn't increasing in line with that, you end up falling behind.